Greetings and welcome back to the QuantumUnity of CARALOT channel. My name is James T. Griffin, and I decided that before I release the videos on the 30 portals of spiritual sovereignty, I wanted to give you a high-level overview of my personal journey of spiritual sovereignty, remembering that I was not just only human, but I was actually a sovereign spirit from the spirit realm, like we all are. So currently, the year 2025, my current calendar age is 45. So my journey began back in 1998, back when my calendar age was 18. Notice I say calendar age. The reason why is that we have more than one age. We have our calendar age, and we have a couple of other ages that you're going to learn more about in my proactive wellness system up in future videos. So going back to 1998, my calendar age was 18. So my sister had an intuitive friend, and I was invited to a coffee shop to have a complimentary free palm reading. So I was generally open to this idea, but I wasn't sure how seriously I was going to take it. So I get to the coffee shop, I introduced myself, I thanked for the reading, and I sat down and I plopped my hands on the table. And immediately the female intuitive said, "You have a lot of green energy coming from your hands." And I said, "Well, what exactly is that supposed to mean?" And she said, "Well, you can use your hands to help people to heal fast." And I said, "Are you serious?" She's like, "Yes." I said, "Okay, what else do you got?" She said, "Well, I see you have a double fate line on your right hand." And I said, "So what's that one supposed to mean?" She said, "Well, you're going to be changing people's lives for the better, not by the thousands, but by the millions. But that's not for a long time coming." And that was 27 years ago. That's when it all began. So a week after I received that complimentary palm reading, I was going to be meeting my girlfriend at the time at a local coffee shop where I lived, near our high schools. And when I got there early. And two of her friends were already there. And I noticed that one of her friends had this look of agony on her face. And I said to her, "You don't look good. Are you okay?" She's like, "I have this horrible back pain." And her best friend was there massaging her back. And I said, "How long has she been massaging your back for?" "All day." And I said, "Have you had any relief whatsoever?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, I recently had this free palm reading, and I was told I have some green energy coming from my hands that can help heal. I'm willing to try them on you. Look, I'm not charging, I'm not promising, but I might be able to help you. Are you open to this?" And she said, "I'm desperate. Please, I'll try anything." I said, "Okay. Put your head down on the table, put your arms out, and then put your head down on your arms and rest. And I just want you just to breathe slowly. And I'm just going to be behind you. And I'm going to put my hands on your middle back. And I just need you to relax. You got it?" She said, "Yes." So I closed my eyes, and what did I know to do? Just imagine green energy going from my hands into her back. So I did that for about 5 minutes approximately. I wasn't timing it. And intuitively, around the 4 to 5 minute mark, I said, "Okay, time to open your eyes." So she opened her eyes. I said, "Okay, stand up." And she stood up. And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "It's gone." I said, "What do you mean it's gone?" She said, "The pain's gone." I said, "Are you serious?" Because I wasn't sure what to believe, what was going on. This is the first time I did this. And she said, "It's all gone." And I was very fascinated. She felt very grateful, and she was in shock and awe that something that she was haunted for hours, pretty much the entire day, was gone in 5 minutes. So I felt very fascinated, very intrigued. So that was very interesting. So I ended up doing that hands-on energy work on and off for the next few years. The reason why it was on and off is because I got distracted with Western world living, with cigarettes, with alcohol, with partying, with what we're generally programmed to do in our teens and our early 20s. So, like I said, it was on and off, didn't give it much thought. And what happened was I ended up taking Reiki level 1 in 2005. And I found out about Reiki, and I was thinking to myself, maybe I can better understand what's going on here as well. So I took Reiki level 1. It was a day-long workshop, and it was interesting. And what I learned, I realized it wasn't what I was doing, because when I was doing Reiki, I found it wasn't as effective as what I was doing initially, just going with this flow, going with this green energy. So again, doing it on and off, for a couple of years. Then I did Reiki level 1 in 2005. Then in 2006, I got a job at a marketing company as a supervisor in trainer position. So I, again, wasn't thinking much about the hands-on energy, the green energy, until someone at the company, an employee, said, I have this headache and I'm going to leave. I'm going to go home. I'm just, it's like a migraine. I can't focus. I can't concentrate. And I said, you know what? Actually, I told them the whole spiel about the green energy from the hands. And look, I don't charge, I don't promise. I don't know if it's even going to work. Are you open to trying it? And she said, yes. I said, okay, sit down, close your eyes, and I'm just going to put my hands on your head. Are you good with that? Yes. So 5 minutes later, the headache was gone. The migraine was gone. And halfway through that, she reported there's a lot of tingling going on in my body. I said, okay, the energy's flowing. Let's see how it goes. So afterwards, it was done. So word got around at this company that I was practicing this energy work and I can help release aches and pains. So over the course of the year and a half I was working there, many approached me, James, I got this headache. Yeah, okay, just sit down, I can help. So anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes, these headaches, these back pains, whatever the discomfort was, disappeared, which is very fascinating. So during the time that I was working there, I was actually introduced to Shaolin Kung Fu. And this is through DVDs. So my father bought the DVDs of the original Kung Fu show that was released in the 1970s. So I watched the 2 seasons, the DVDs, and I found it very fascinating because not just about the martial art element, but because of the mysticism, the energy component. So I also learned that as someone who practices martial arts, it can help them to focus. So if they're doing this hands-on energy work with their hands, it can help to amplify and increase the effectiveness of that energy. So I was very fascinated by it. And I was thinking to myself, I wish I learned this Kung Fu when I was younger, when I was a child. That way I'd be really good at it. And I thought about it for a while, then I just let it go. And then a couple of months down the road, it might have been 6 months-ish, at the company, the marketing company, I walked up to an employee's desk who I was supervising and training at the time. And I noticed that he had a martial arts book on his desk. And I said, oh, great. Do you take martial arts? And he said, no, I actually teach martial arts. And I said, oh, which one? He said, Shaolin Kung Fu. I said, are you serious? I've been so fascinated by Shaolin Kung Fu. I watched the DVDs. I love the mysticism element of it. He said, well, would you like private training? And I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, I'll give you a really good rate. So for a year and a half, I did the Shaolin Kung Fu private training, which I was really grateful for, one of the best pieces of training I ever received. Now, still in the year of 2006, I was introduced to my teacher for Shaolin Kung Fu. I actually self-studied yoga. I got some yoga DVDs. I self-studied nutrition. So I was getting involved in this holistic perception of energy and how it was all working. I was starting to put puzzle pieces together, but my puzzle was far from complete. And then at the end of 2006, I enrolled in hypnosis school, Ontario Hypnosis Center training, and I received my certification and training in hypnosis. So it was a very eventful year in regards to my training into holistic and consciousness and spirituality. So from 2007 to 2009, I practiced hypnosis and I did the surface level hypnosis stuff. I did focused on stop smoking cigarettes, very common reason to go get hypnosis, weight loss, and even stopping nail biting. So these are nice, but they were surface level, and I was just being introduced to hypnosis. And in 2009, I was invited to a private training for Qigong. And Qigong masters from the Sports University of Beijing, they came to a yoga studio. And I received a private invitation because they were going to be teaching a specific form called Yi Jin Jing. So I knew the owner of the yoga studio. She knew I had some experience in Shaolin Kung Fu. So she asked me if I wanted to participate in this invitation only in this very limited space. So I said, absolutely yes. So I ended up taking the weekend training for Yi Jin Jing. One thing I did found about it, it was interesting, but it was a little on the boring side. And even the teachers that came from China, the Sports University of Beijing, they didn't speak English. So there was interpretation going on as well. So that was really interesting. So I ended up taking the Yijin Jing and I ended up passing the test and I got certified to teach it, but I wasn't really impressed with it. It was a little on the boring side. So what I ended up doing in 2010 was I ended up creating my own Qigong system. I called it the Griffin Qigong system. Now, it combined some of the Qigong that I learned, and I also combined some of the Kung Fu that I learned as well, but I also got some DVDs, and I learned more about the various different styles and trainings of Qigong to find out there were over 1,000 different styles and training, because you had the basic training, you can end up creating your own form. So that's what I did. So I ended up creating my own form with open hands, but as well as light weights, because I wanted to combine the lightweight training with Qigong. So that's what I did. And no one ever taught me that. That was an inspired idea that I received. So I ended up doing that. So after I created the Griffin Qigong system, fast forward to 2011, I was still practicing hypnosis. I wasn't doing a lot of the hands-on energy work because I did that on and off for years. I was more focused on hypnosis. So I ended up creating my own Qigong form. And in 2011, my grandmother, she went to a retirement residence because my grandfather transitioned to the afterlife a couple years before. She lived in a house. So she moved to a retirement residence near where I lived. And she wasn't happy about that because she was losing her independence. So I approached the program director or program manager at the seniors residence, and I asked, can I come in and teach Qigong on a weekly basis? My grandmother moved in and I just want to help her to integrate as smooth as possible. So he ended up speaking to the upper management and they received a budget. They said, you can come in every 2 weeks, Wednesday morning from 10 to 10:30. I said, great. So I found out that from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Monday to Friday, they had the regular exercise class. So these are senior citizens, by the way. So I have to come in at 10 a.m. on every other Wednesday to work with seniors who already did their exercise. So Qigong, remember, means to cultivate internal energy, to work with your internal energy. So I worked for them from 10 to 10:30. By the time 10:30 came around, they all had more energy after than they did before because Qigong is cultivating internal energy. So I had to entertain them and engage them because remember, I'm working with senior citizens. If I just taught Qigong, they would have fallen asleep and my class would have been canceled. It would have been boring. So I realized I had to entertain, I had to engage, and then I taught Qigong. So at the end of every one of my classes, I went around and gave everybody a hug because I said, okay, everybody, it's now time for the most important movement of Qigong, and it's a hug. Because in seniors residences, affection isn't a regular practice. So everybody was grateful to receive their hug. Now, my class generally had a higher female population than male, but even the males let me hug them because they picked up on my authentic energy. So that was really lovely. So I taught there in 2011. I did the whole year. So again, every 2 weeks, so 26 weeks. And I had the most popular class there of the year. And because I entertained, I engaged, and then I taught Qigong as well. My grandmother was very grateful that I came in to taught Qigong as well. So that was a great experiment for me to teach Qigong to seniors. Now, what's interesting is my seniors, my students, their age ranges were between 83 and 101. So the woman who turned from age 100 to 101 that year, she didn't attend the regular exercise class. She attended my class because she felt that she got more benefit from it as well. So to find out that I had the most popular class for that year at that seniors residence, I was pretty honored to be able to receive that. It was very lovely. So taught that for the year. So after that, I continued to practice my hypnosis, and I did some personal training for Qigong with some of my clients when I felt it was appropriate. And then in 2013, I came across a not-for-profit company that what they did was they helped individuals to find employment. So they arranged employers to connect with potential employees. So it was one of the most successful non-for-profit employee employment companies across Canada. So I met the founder and the executive director, and he loved the work that I did. And he said, I'm open to bringing you on to do some wellness training for my employees. And we have 7 locations throughout the GTA, and I could potentially bring you in once a month where you go to every location. And I said, great. And he said, well, what would be your focus? I said, well, I'm not interested in any pharmaceutical drugs that they're on. I'm just going to bring their personal level of wellness from here to here. That's it. And he said, you know what? I love that. I'm going to pitch this to the board and I can get you in. So I ended up getting in. Now, I was with that company for over 10 years until 2023. But let's go back in time. So I started that program in 2013, and I introduced employees to the concepts of nutrition, deep breathing, qigong, yoga, even self-hypnosis, intuition, synchronicity, a lot of elements that you would not even find in any corporate environment. So over the course of the 10 years, my participation rate average was 40%. And this was a company that had over 100 employees. And your average participation rate in an employee wellness program is anywhere between 5 and 15%. And if you hit 15%, it was a home run. So in my first year, I had a 60%. And for years afterwards, I have an average participation rate of 40% because I really inspired and I didn't preach. I always said you can accept or reject anything you hear. I'm just here to help you to improve your overall quality of life. And many employees said, the main reason why I continue to come here is because you always say that. You're not trying to push anything on us. You tell us to accept what we want, reject what we don't want. And they found that very reassuring and soothing. So I had a very high participation rate. So I was with them for 10 years. Now, 2014, I got my Reiki level 2 training and my integrated energy therapy training as well. So I wanted to know exactly what was going on. Now, also too, around the 2013, 2014 mark, I was introduced to the idea of afterlife communication. And I did receive messages from my loved ones in my dreams, but I didn't really give it much thought until I recently, like at that time, I started attending a church that focused on spiritualism, where afterlife communication and spiritual healing were major elements. So I participated in that church. I even sat on the board of directors for that church for 2 years. And at that time, I received my spiritual healing training, which was interesting. And I was really introduced to the world of afterlife communication. I began to realize we're not humans, we're actually spirits. And we come down to the earth realm in these human physical beings, in these human costumes. And then we end up going back to the spirit realm, or commonly known as the afterlife. So that was a huge component in me recognizing that we are sovereign spirits and we're not just only human. So being able to receive messages directly in our dreams or through what spiritualism calls mediumship, and many are starting to realize mediumship, it's a natural ability that we all have. So very fascinating. So fast forward again, 2014, Reiki level 2, integrated energy therapy levels 1 and 2, and that is working with energy and working with angels and spirit guides as well. So in 2016, I got my neurolinguistic programming training and my life coaching training. And by then there was nothing new because I self-studied consciousness, the subconscious, all those elements as well. But I thought I'd get those under my belt with training. So come 2020, the lockdown years, many were saying, James, you need to write a book. You need to inspire. You've shared with like personal employees and personal clients were saying, James, can you please write a book? You've shared so much information. Can you just write a book? So I took a year and I wrote the book. And in 2021, I released my first book, Get Your Black Belt in Proactive Wellness First Degree. And at that time, I released it in January of 2021 and it reached Amazon Canada #1 bestseller in 3 categories. It wasn't across Canada, but it made it in 3 categories for a couple of days, which I was grateful because it did reach out to many of my personal clients and my employees. So putting together the proactive wellness system. So in that book, I outline my proactive wellness system, which is 7 portals that helps us to slow down aging, increase energy, strengthen immunity, accelerating cellular repair, regeneration, expand and strengthen our aura. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but these 7 portals were helping us to give us the tools to help us to optimize and maximize our divine life purpose. Because as sovereign spirits, before coming to the earth realm, we chose a divine life purpose. And after writing that book, after a couple of years, I realized, you know what? These 7 portals of the proactive wellness system are really portals to help us to optimize and maximize our divine life purpose. And the byproduct of fulfilling our divine life purpose or maximizing it is slowing down cellular aging, increasing energy, strengthening immunity, all that beautiful things. So the 7 portals of the proactive wellness system designed to help us to optimize and maximize our divine life purpose. In 2022, a few years later, I had a beautiful opportunity to work in 2 private schools. So one private school in Ontario, I did an after-school program of my proactive wellness, introducing children to aura, energy work, activating the palm chakras and doing the energy work. And they loved me so much that they said, would you like to be added to our supply teacher roster? So I don't have a teacher's degree. I didn't even complete my university degree. I wasn't interested in that, but they loved my energy so much. So I did some supply teaching at that school on and off whenever I was available. Now, there was also another school in Ontario that I was actually a part-time teacher, but they called coach. And during that time in spring of 2022, I did the coaching for some of the students. And I even did energy work on them as well. They had headaches, they fell and hurt themselves. I did the energy work, and you don't touch children, you just do it around their aura, their energy field. And they were amazed and astonished. So at both schools, I ended up teaching the children how to activate their palm chakras, feel energy, and do the work on each other, because it came to a point where they were asking me so much. I said, you know what, you can do this yourself. They said, really? Yeah, this is how you activate your palm chakras, taught them how to feel the energy between their hands, which was really great. So I love the opportunity. I worked with children, I worked with teens, I worked with adults, I worked with seniors over these years. And then in 2023, I had the insight from my spirit guides to write the book Spiritual Sovereignty. So there was a first edition that was released. It was a much longer title. It was Spiritual Sovereignty, 2 separate words. And the subtitle was Humanity's Direct Path to Spiritual Evolution and Unification. Now, that book was great, but it wasn't great enough. And I was guided by my spirit guides to make some changes to the title and make some changes inside. And by the way, when I released the book Spiritual Sovereignty, A Direct Path to Humanity's Spiritual Evolution and Unification, I released that on the eclipse in 2024. And it did receive that Amazon Canada #1 bestseller in spiritual ebooks for a few days as well. However, later on that year, I was inspired and guided by my spirit guides to rewrite it so spiritual sovereignty is not 2 separate words. It's now 1 word. So that's the title, Spiritual Sovereignty, 1 word, 1 term. And the new subtitle for the book was a path to unity consciousness. So spiritual sovereignty, a path to unity consciousness. And that's what it was all about. It was all about forming organized unity consciousness. So again, the book contained the 30 portals of spiritual sovereignty that we can all agree upon, because I realized that in order for us to create new systems, because the old systems are beginning to break down and fall away, their credibility and their integrity was falling. We're talking the education system, the mainstream media, the healthcare system, and even the entertainment industry, all beginning to erode, break down, and fall away, and they eventually need to be replaced with new systems. So that's what I've been working on over the past few years, creating an overall framework. Now, in order for us to integrate these into the earth realm, we have to form organized unity consciousness. So organized unity consciousness is not just saying, oh, we're all love, or oh, we're all one. That's vague and open to interpretation. So that's why I formed the 30 portals of spiritual sovereignty. So it's like a 30 variable equation that we can all agree upon, because in order for us to form organized unity consciousness, we have to have a new framework to believe in and to resonate with. So everyone I introduced, the 30 portals of spiritual sovereignty, they generally agreed in principle with every one of the portals. So I wanted to create this video just to give you a very, very high level overview of my path from being only human to a sovereign spirit from the spirit realm, having a multidimensional earth realm experience. So my divine life purpose is to bring CARALOT to the earth realm at this time, when the earth really needs it most, to form organized unity consciousness. So I'm going to be releasing more videos on more details of my journey from 1998 to 2025. And you're going to learn more about my personal journey of spiritual sovereignty. But again, I just wanted to introduce to you my personal path. You get to know my personal energy, frequency, and vibration, and my path to spiritual sovereignty, remembering that I'm not just only human. I'm actually a sovereign spirit having a multidimensional earth realm experience, and I've chosen to come here to fulfill my divine life purpose, as we all have come to fulfill a divine life purpose, and we're here to remember that we're sovereign spirits. Spirituality isn't something that's taught, it's remembered. The proactive wellness system, that's something that's taught, and you're going to learn more about that as time goes on. So thanks for tuning in to this video. My name is James T. Griffin, and again, welcome to the QuantumUnity of CARALOT. And in the upcoming videos, you're going to be learning more about the 30 portals of spiritual sovereignty that we can all agree upon, so we can come together and form organized unity consciousness. Thanks for tuning in. Create yourself a beautiful day. I look forward to seeing you in upcoming videos.